Bam, we're live. We did it. I used to be stressed out when the show started. Now for some reason I get relaxed. Like, holy shit, I made it. Are you on vacation?
I am. So this is like our off season, and so yeah, before the open starts here, we got away with the family.
That's awesome. Jedidiah.
Yes.
Jedidiah.
Correct.
Yeah. Is it a hard name to say, or is it just me?
It's not. It's a hard name to read.
Oh,
so when
yes.
people aren't sure how to, like, if it's Jedidiah or Jedidiah, or I get all kinds of things, but Jedidiah, that's not hard to say once you know how to say it. So.
I demand Matt Souza appears. Ah, there you are. Hi, Matt Souza. Powers.
Hey guys, what's going on?
Good morning.
Look, I see a seagull over Jedidiah. Jedidiah, are you covered? I saw a seagull fly over you. You're not going to get drilled.
Yeah, no, I'm good. So I'm on the patio of our room, so
all right.
I'm protected.
All right. Souza, you can be in the shadows if you want, or you can be up front. It's up to you, brother.
All right, maybe I'll do a little balance of both here. Just want to give my smiling face and a wave.
Jedidiah popped up on the on my radar. A bunch of people at Wadapalooza while we were covering that, courtesy of Ancestral Supplements, said, "Hey, you got to talk to this guy Jedidiah." I got like a handful of DMs, and so then basically what I was doing was just like DMing as many people as I could, because I was trying to make the show cool, right? To have just like tons of people lined up just everywhere. And Jedidiah was one of those people who slipped through the cracks. A ton of people slipped through the cracks. And Jedidiah was nice enough not to take offense that he slipped through the cracks and circle back with us and come on during his vacation.
No worries. That's a chaotic time during Waza. So
did you guys, so they had a massive rain delay. Rain delay. My heart went out to Dylan, Kristen, the crew there, Matt O'Keefe, because I know that's stressful. You got all these little chickies in the nest barking, "Mommy, Daddy, let's go, let's go, let's go." What ended up happening to you guys? Did you guys get any priority? I mean, obviously the I don't know what you call them, the pro guys.
Yes.
The guys with the big Instagram accounts got to go. Did anyone else get to go?
Yeah, so we did get our last workout, and I think that was more of a priority due to the fact that we had been last minute cut out of the run, swim, run because of logistics. So we were already down a workout, and so had they cut that workout too, it would have been awful. But we were very fortunate. They made it happen, and so we got back and got to complete our last workout.
So they basically were like, "Hey, okay, so." Wait, well, let's go back to what you just said right there. Why did you guys get cut out of the run, swim, run? Was that because of that debacle with the girl that they thought they lost in the water?
No, it was before that. They had just decided at the beginning of the weekend that due to logistics, is all I was told. I assume, obviously, the rowers they had this year with the assault, they don't come apart like a Concept 2. So we obviously could not use the rower. So we could have done like a run, swim, which we've done in the past, but I don't know where exactly they were holding it and what the logistics of that was, because when they've had the off-site runs and swims, we've been able to participate, no problem. But when they have it off of Bayside only, the ramp is too steep in the water for the seated athletes. And so I think just due to the size of everything this year and logistics, they just said, we just to be safe, we're gonna bag this one. So
what division do you compete in?
So I compete. So there's technically two answers to that. So the easiest one is to say seated. I am a T12 paraplegic, and so I compete from a wheelchair in the seated division. Now, most competitions nowadays have two seated divisions. There is the seated 1 and the seated 2, which is defined by with hip function or without hip function, meaning that you may have partial use of your legs or your hips and be able to pull from those muscle groups and activate. Or you're like me, you're a paraplegic where your legs do nothing but get in the way. And so transitions, doing lifts, like it's just a complete, we have less muscle groups that we're able to pull from.
And no age groups?
No age groups.
And what's the youngest you can be to compete in that?
They haven't really defined that way. I know, so like Josie Portal, she competes in the women's, and she's competed at Wadapalooza often. And the last time, she's the same age as my daughter, so the last time she was there, she wasn't able to make it this year actually due to school schedule and finals for her semester. But the last year she competed there, she was 11. So so they
11
haven't.
years old.
Yeah, yeah. So
So tell me, how is it a competition? But it's separated by sex too, right? By your genitalia.
correct.
Okay, so then you, so it would be you with a bunch of other dudes who are seated, meaning you don't have use to your legs. This one isn't split by hip. How, and is there a winner?
Yes.
So it's like, fuck you. I don't care that you're 11. I'm 32. I don't care if you're 75. I'm whooping your ass.
Yeah. So
I like
she does.
it. I like
she,
it. I
yeah.
approve. I approve.
Yeah, she holds her own. She holds her own in the scale division. She's been on the podium several times. So
What's the deal? Is it a sensitive group? Like, is there a really fucking strong like vernacular you're supposed to use and not deviate from it?
No,
it's
especially us that are this way, and because we're more outgoing and open to the real world. You know, we make jokes, and some people like are almost aghast at times the things that we say, but it's just we're not sensitive. Like life is, you know, it goes on, so get over it. Like,
do you know Pitbull Raw?
yes, Zach, I do.
He has that great joke where he asked, you've probably heard it, where he asked God for a giant penis, or no, he asked God for a penis that drags on the ground.
Right. Yeah.
And so God removed his legs, and holy shit, what a great joke. He's like, be careful what you ask for, man. Be careful what you ask for.
Right. No, it's true.
Have you met him?
I have. I've competed with Zach multiple times in the past.
Zach. I always forget his name. What did I call him? Pitbull Rules.
Pitbull, I know. How often does that happen nowadays? We identify people by their Instagram handles instead of their real name. I do that all the time.
Yep.
Susan, can I see what T12 is? Where that is?
Yes.
Is that an input? Are all the vertebrae are important, right, Jedidiah? You can't.
Well, yeah. If one doesn't work, then you know you're in some kind of condition like I am. So.
Is that in accidents? Is that you had some sort of accident?
Yeah, so I used to race motocross. I raced 17 years, 5 years professionally as a minor league athlete, and then was racing recreationally after I'd retired from pro racing, and had an accident in the winter where I came down off of a steep downhill and got thrown off the track. The problem was where I landed was during the winter, and the ground, even though the track was a sand track and they drug it, but where I got thrown was off the track and the ground was frozen 2-3 inches deep.
Frozen, is that what you said?
Yeah, so it was basically like hitting concrete.
Is that one that broke right there? Is that a typical one that broke because it's kind of at the apex of that turn, or?
Yeah, you tend to find like common injuries is like down like T11, T12, and then it jumps kind of generally. Then you see either like between T3, T6, or then it's the neck, like the C's. Those are kind of common, you know, more vulnerable points, I would say. But I mean, people get injuries at multiple different levels depending on what kind of accident they had and where they get hit.
So did any of your other vertebrae get damaged?
No, not my vertebrae. Just everything else around my spine in that accident.
You punctured a lung.
I did. I punctured my lung. I broke several ribs. I shattered my sternum. I dislocated my shoulder and my left hip, and then that also sheared off the head of my femur. So, yeah, I was a mess for a while.
Wait. Tell me about this sheared off the head of the femur thing.
Yeah. So basically, when my hip dislocated, it like you kind of like an apple, like if you slice it with a knife, it basically sheared off a piece of the head of my femur, and I had to have another surgery later to go in and reattach it.
Why do that if you don't have use to your legs? Why not just say fuck it?
Well, because your body can still, like, your body still functions the same, even though I don't have mental control of it. Like,
it still has to articulate in there. It still has to work.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's actually been a pain because now I have partial fusion of my hip on that side. I have a condition from having that injury and head trauma at the same time, where there was like a scramble in my brain where it says it tries to tell my body that my left hip is a broken bone, so it tries to constantly deposit calcium there to fuse it into one piece. So,
and what were the implications of that? You were saying there's pain there now?
no, so there's a partial fusion, so it gets real stiff. So I literally have to stretch out my left hip every day to keep it from trying to like solidify.
Oh, like those guys who can't bend their arms because they got like the build up here?
Correct. Yeah, exactly.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Nuts.
So,
shattered sternum.
Yeah. Yeah, that was painful for a while too.
Does that just that comes back together by itself?
Yeah, it was a place where it didn't like it didn't dislocate or dislodge. It just was all kinds of in pieces, and so it just healed itself.
There's a video here that I want to show you that I pulled from your Instagram account. Sorry, Susan, I'm taking your job for a second. Now, you guys, I'm gonna play this, and it's gonna come quick. You're lifting overhead.
Oh yeah, this is old school.
And I couldn't find the exact clip by itself. All right, this. Okay, I'm not gonna play this quite yet. So describe to me what's going on here, and do you ever make this mistake again? I'm gonna play the clip in a minute after it happens once. Do you ever make this mistake again?
Yeah. Occasionally, not as often. So this was a 140-pound bar. And I was doing, it was actually during one of the open workouts, and I can't remember which one it was specifically. This was a while ago. This was like 17 or 16, I think. And yeah, so there was a max lift at the end, and I just pulled it really hard, or it was a snatch, and I pulled it really hard, and once I got it overhead, there's too much leverage on the back, and so the chair flipped. And yeah, my natural reaction. And the bad thing about the video is it looks like it hits my legs, but it actually hit the two front crossbars of the chair.
Yeah, there it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's nuts. And now in competitions, or at least in other videos, I see someone's holding your chair when you're going overhead.
Yeah. It's actually funny now, since I've kind of developed my technique. I tend to more want to tip with a lighter bar than a heavier bar, and the reason is because it's more the rebound. So I use my back and my core a lot to pull into a lift, and so when I'm doing like high rep, like from the lat, I'll throw myself forward and then pop back, and that momentum with the bar is more likely to throw me than a heavy bar, just because of the rebound and the inertia.
Right.
So
God, that's scary. Was that scary as shit when that happened?
Yeah, especially when I'm tossing a 140-pound bar.
Yeah,
and I hope it goes far enough to clear me.
Another video there's a whole bunch of these videos that make me really uncomfortable is when you go in the water, when you swim, right?
Yeah.
Because every time I see you go in the water, I pretend like I go into my head and I start pretending that's me, but my legs are tied together or something. Like they say, Sevon, jump in the pool. If you don't use your legs, we're gonna electrocute you. I'll be like, oh, shit. I mean, how is that swimming with, how much do your legs weigh?
I don't know. So I tend to have more density than others, though, just because of the fact that my legs are in constant spasm with my injury, meaning that they don't shake necessarily all the time, but they're constantly contracted. So the muscles are always tight and fighting me. And so the downside is my legs fight me. Like whatever I'm doing, they're not on the same team. But with that constant contraction of the muscle, they keep more tone than others who are just still and don't do anything. So I probably have a good amount of weight.
It must be crazy swimming with just it's like having tentacles, I guess. But you can't control them. Like,
yeah, it's not bad once you get comfortable, because the good things is they're still, right. So they, it's more of that free float. And as long as you keep a little, like you tread water fairly easy, once you relax and just, swim normal, it's just slower. But at first it's kind of like, you got to get past that mind freak when I first learned how to swim without my legs, because, yeah.
And then I noticed that it appears that like if you are become very confident, you'll be swimming and then you'll just rotate onto your back and take a break for a second.
So
like you learn to float on your back for a second and then flip back over.
And I tend to swim, especially long distance in open water. I swim on my back and do a backstroke because the way my legs contract, they stay bent. And so if I stay on my stomach, it wants to drag me underneath, and it's almost like pulling an anchor. But if I swim on my back, the water tends to like free flow underneath me, and so I can stay on top easier. And
Oh, that's nice. Did you know the backstroke before you got in your accident?
no, I was not much of a swimmer at all. So
you're in a sport where your injury is not uncommon. Is that correct? You were in a sport
with motocross?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
relatively not uncommon.
Yes, correct, right.
I think before, I want to say this in the most severe, harshest way I can.
Perfect.
Before people started spending, making it an American pastime to kill themselves and shoving poison in their mouths 24 hours a day, the leading cause of the leading use of prosthetics was motorcycle people. Now it's people who drink too much Coca-Cola. It's fascinating. Yeah. It's fascinating.
I think
for those of you who aren't following, you drink too much Coca-Cola, you get type 2 diabetes, you lose blood flow to your legs, and your legs come off. That is the leading cause of amputation in the United States. People who do it to themselves. Should my kids pay the price for that? Sorry. Okay, I'll come back.
The silver lining is COVID's helped with that, just because the motorcycle industry, dirt bikes, recreational vehicles are like booming. When everybody got
wait, why is that good?
Well, when everybody got quarantined, they wanted to get outside and be active again because they were sick of being stuck in their house, and at that time you could do it in social distance still. So motorcycle sales, UTV sales, all these just went skyrocketing because people wanted to get out.
So you think motorcycles will surpass type 2 diabetes now as the leading cause of prosthetics?
I don't know. Hopefully, because that means the numbers came way down, but we'll see. At least people are on dirt bikes again.
I just saw it again a couple days ago. The average first it was like 40% of the United States put on at least 29 pounds or more. And recently, I just heard that the average person in the United States in the last 2 years has put on 29 pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. And not like arms like you either.
Right.
Not like arms like you either.
Yeah, that's sad.
Oh, it's brutal. It's brutal. So when you were riding, did you know dudes who were in wheelchairs who used to ride?
Yes. Yeah, I do. I have a couple close friends that were paralyzed.
And what did you have any? Is this Nick Palladino, the child superstar who's now a young man?
Yeah, I think it is. He said that it was him earlier on another one.
Oh, that's cool. What's up, Nick? We had this guy compete. Do you know this guy, Jedidiah?
I might if I see I'm a face person, not a name person. So
he trained. I think he trained over at Mayhem with Angelo DeChico. He's he hasn't been in the scene in a few years. I guess he's killing it in the Twitch world now, playing video games. But nice. He was super crazy strong. He had I think he had like a 300-pound snatch as a 16-year-old boy. Something crazy like that. Yeah.
Whoa.
What did you think about those guys? Who were in the wheelchairs from motorcycle accidents? Did you give them much thought? What was your perception of that? What were your feelings on that? How did you process that?
To be honest, I didn't have much feeling because I've grown up where I just was extremely active outside. Accidents happen. It's just part of living life. And so I didn't, to be honest, at the time, think much of it. I know that I had a lot of, knowing what I know now, there's a lot of misperception as far as what they dealt with or went through. But yeah, I had a couple friends that were in wheelchairs that I would hang out with at times and that were paralyzed due to racing. And it was just, that's who they were, and life went on. But yeah, so like I said, I had a different perception as far as some of the stuff that they went through now that I've experienced it myself. But I think it also helped that, I would, like I said, I was involved in the sport for 17 years and at a high level, both as an athlete and a strength and conditioning coach for a while. And so when my accident happened, it was no surprise. It wasn't like, it caught me out of left field. It's like, yeah, okay, I always knew this was you don't think it's going to happen to you, but I knew it was an option or a potential. So when it happened, it did not take me by surprise. And I had some other accidents prior in racing where I probably should have been paralyzed or dead, to be honest. So
Yeah.
When you say some of your perceptions of what it was like to go through it, and anything stand out as an example?
yeah, the internal struggles. Like people ask me, like, what would you do if you could have one thing back as far as what you've lost? And most people would say, well, I'd love to have the function of my legs left. Honestly, I'd love to have bowel control and that kind of stuff. Some of the nerve pain that I deal with is more of a bigger issue than my legs not working. So that stuff that you just don't know until you sit. You think somebody's just sitting in a chair, they're just sitting in a chair comfortably. You don't realize that their hips are tight, their nerves are just off the charts. Like everything is just in constant contraction and pain, and you just learn to deal with it. And so they're not making faces, they're constantly like, whatever, but because you just get used to it. And so you think from the outside, you just see them sitting there comfortably. They're not sitting comfortably.
Right. I had a friend named Vern Martel. He was a Canadian, a professional arm wrestler, and he only had one arm. Amazing arm wrestler. Always made me nervous to see him arm wrestle because, like, I always think, shit, what if his one arm gets injured?
Blew his shoulder out or something.
Yeah. But he would tell it was the first time, and this was maybe, I don't know, 20 years ago. He would tell me about phantom pains. He would basically tell me that where his arm's missing, that basically it feels like he's on fire.
Yeah.
And I was like, I could never get my head really wrapped around that. Is that something that you have also? You have phantom pains, even though you can't feel your legs, you feel your legs?
The best way to describe it for me is, when you like lay on your arm wrong or you lay on your leg wrong and then you try to stand up and your leg's asleep and it has that fuzziness that goes throughout the leg. Yes. So my legs have that 24/7. If they're uncomfortable, it gets extremely intense and at a very high intensity, high vibration, very uncomfortable. If my legs are relaxed, it gets very subtle and harmonious. So yeah, but it's there 24/7. Just that fuzziness.
Where did you say you were again right now, where you're sitting? Like what country?
Mexico. We're in Puerto Morelos, just outside of Cancun.
And you flew there? Yes. And how is that? So do you loathe plane rides? Does that shit just get fired up in the plane?
I do, because the seats are uncomfortable. My legs get super tight, just sitting there for that long. And so we've planned it, at least for me, especially with the spasms in my legs, that when I always get to a place early and I just have a down day when we get there, where the next day I just pretty much chill, try and get out of my chair as much as I can, lay in bed and just let my body kind of settle down.
If you just want to get your, for me, I live in the comfort of my own home and I have this garage. I think it looks like you have a garage where I can just go and just get away. And so yesterday was my fasting day. I don't eat for 36 hours once a week. And so a couple times a day, I just go sit on the assault bike and I just ride it for 10 minutes and until sweat starts dribbling down. And then I just get off, you know what I mean? Get my heartbeat up. Yeah. And I do that a couple times a day. What do you do? What's the go-to for a dude without legs? If you just want to get your heartbeat up you know what I mean? But you don't want to work. You just want to get your heartbeat up, feel a bead of sweat come down. What do you do?
I have a commercial hand cycle for that. So it's like some spinning for somebody else, right? Like having a spin bike. I just get on it, or like you talk about with your assault bike, and I just spin my arms out forward and backward for a little while, and then just to get my heart rate, my blood flowing, and then I go through a stretching session. Very low impact on my shoulders and my elbows, but cycles everything out, gets the blood flowing, and
Can I see that, Souza?
I'm getting it right now.
It's called a hand cycle?
Yeah, it's like literally the one I found at an old wholesale gym place. They had it secondhand, and so mine's a little bit different than that. That's actually a modern one. Mine is like literally from the 1980s. It's a big commercial bulk thing. The screen on it looks like an Atari. It's pretty trippy, but it works.
So that thing's just bolted to a table right there.
Yeah, so mine's on an actual how they have these recumbent bikes where at the gym where you sit on them and you're kind of sitting in a lounge chair and you're just pedaling your legs.
Yeah.
So mine's that way, only with a hand cycle instead of the leg cycle.
Gotcha. Do you actually have a hand cycle that you can ride around town with?
No, I don't.
Yeah.
They're expensive. That's the biggest thing is all the extra equipment is so expensive. So if I wanted to get one, it's anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000.
Right. I guess one of the reasons also is all the stuff that the vast majority of people use, the price just comes down the more and more people die, right? The more and more people buy. Like flat screens TV now are $6 at Best Buy, right? When before they were $6,000, and no one buys hand cycles, right? So like the cost is exorbitant.
It would be, and that's not necessarily true. It's more from the insurance and the liability from being deemed medical equipment or a medical, and so there's all these extra things where it shouldn't cost that much, but it does because of anything deemed medical. Then the price goes up triple. So
crazy.
Yeah.
Hey, is there oh, that's interesting. I remember seeing Greg Glassman had he had polio as a kid.
Yeah.
Even though he could cycle, he could ride a regular bike like a madman. He would clip in and just ride. But he had a hand cycle. He had a home in Arizona. He still has a home in Arizona, and there was a hand cycle in there. Do non-disabled people use hand cycles? Non-able-bodied? Yeah. Does your wife use your hand cycle?
No.
No.
No, she's got her spin bike. No, she's got her spin bike. So, I mean, imagine there's, situations for therapy or whatnot if people have elbow injuries or shoulder injuries and they're trying to rebuild, just like knee constructive surgery or whatever, where they'd use a hand bike. But
how old was your daughter when you got hurt?
She was 5.
Did that fuck her up?
Yes. She is extremely mature for her age, and I attribute a lot of it to the trauma that she went through. She was actually at the track with me that day. My wife, who is an event producer, was actually helping another friend who's a wedding planner who got short-staffed help with the wedding, so she was gone. So my daughter went to the track with me that day, and thankfully I had friends that were very on point, that as soon as I had my accident and they knew what was going on, they grabbed her and they put her in one of the camping trailers with some other young kids so that she didn't actually physically see it. But she knew stuff was going on. And then when she got home, obviously all of a sudden Dad couldn't walk, and life was very different after that.
How long after your crash did you show up at home? A month? A week?
So I was in the hospital for just about 3 months.
Holy shit. Hey, dude, Jedidiah, I bought my kid I'm 49, right? My kids know I'm old. They know something's wrong. Like they got a fucked up dad, right? They're like, how come the other dads don't look like you? And when we're out, people be like, oh, nice grandkids. It's fucked up. But anyway, I mean, not for me. I'm cool with it. I feel bad for them. No one wants the old dad. But my son's 7. And I have another 2 sons who are 5, and they have a 1-wheel. It's this. Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
It's like a Segway with 1 wheel. Okay.
Yeah.
So if I get on it, they'll start crying.
Because they think you're going to hurt yourself?
Yes, sir. Crying.
Yeah.
Crying. If I do anything like that looks like it's like remotely... Like when we go to the skate park, I go into all the bowls and I clean up. I pick up all the cans and like I don't want any bottle caps, just all the shit those kids throw down in there. And my kids get concerned that like I'm not going to be able to get out. I'm like, dude, like you see me do 1 million pull-ups in the garage. What are you tripping?
Right.
On? Like I can't. They think I'm going to get trapped in the pool.
Yeah.
And they start panicking. It's nuts. It's fucking. So I can only imagine the trauma. It had on your daughter. Like that really when you crashed, did you think about her like, oh shit, where the fuck's my daughter?
Well, no, because I was out of it. I mean, I suffered a major TBI, and so I was out for several minutes, and when I came to, there's bits and pieces I remember, but outside of that I was out of it. So I went through initial reaction that's funny. Like motocrossers, we're not normal people. We're built a different way. And there's this thing when we have an accident where, the paramedics and everybody will come over and we're like, no, like, I'm fine. Just get away from me. Leave me alone. Give me a second. I'll be fine. Yeah. And I kept doing that. I kept fighting everybody. They're trying to strap me to a board and I'm like, I'm fine. Get away. Like, and granted, I'm not in my right mind, right? And so finally one of the volunteer, the firefighters that were there, because there's a fire station close to that track, they always respond first. So So one of the firefighters like stood up finally and goes, "Fine, everybody get away." And so everybody backed off, and he said, "Okay, go ahead." And so I sat there for a second, and then I was like, "Oh shit, I can't move my legs." And so it just hit me, and so then I was like, "Okay, go ahead." And then I was like, "Okay, yeah, obviously I need this today," but I've had moments where I'm like, I'm fine. I push them off, and then I finally get up and grab the dirt bike and go. But
Yeah,
which may not be the greatest thing, but it happens.
That's when I used to skateboard way back when, and I would do it at a competitive level. You would fall, you would take a bad fall, and everybody's first initial reaction is just to jump up and be like, "Okay, I'm good, everything's working," and stuff like that. So that was the reason why you're pushing everybody, like, give me space so I could pop up, and then you realize, oh fuck.
Yeah, I didn't acknowledge on me that my legs weren't working. I was just more focused on everybody trying to swarm me, and yeah, because I've had, like you said, I've had moments where I just pop up and go. I mean, I had one race where I took a bad spill, and they thought I'd broken my neck because of the way my helmet snapped, and I got up and I jumped back on the track, and didn't realize it until I hit the next jump that I broke my collarbone, and my arm went up, and I was like, oh, and so I just like tossed the bike, and I'm like, yep, nope, I'm not good.
What a crazy sport.
Yeah.
My nephews do that. I have 3 nephews in Texas who race motocross.
Yep.
Actually, 2. One of them just stopped. I hate to say this, but I'm so glad. I mean, I like watching them. Don't get me wrong, but
it gets a bad rap. It's small, right? It's a very small percentage sport, and so it looks like there's a lot more injuries than there really is. When you actually do the statistics and look at it statistically, the percentage of injuries versus other sports is actually very low. The problem is when there are injuries, they tend to be more severe, and because it's so small, it has this microscope on it that makes it look worse than it is.
At the CrossFit Games one year, they had this guy. He was a stunt rider, and it was in in Carson, and he would go off these giant ramps, these huge ramps. I don't know if you remember. It was in the soccer stadium. And he would do these backflips and shit and just crazy shit. And it's so different to see. I couldn't even watch. Like, because when I watch that shit on TV, I'm like, oh, this is really cool. This is fun. In person, it's absolutely like, I mean,
but
it was so intense. The guy was safe. He was killing it. It landed every jump. It was a miracle. But it's so intense.
It's just like gymnastics. It's all timing and flow. So I trained. So like I said, I worked. When I retired from racing at first for 12 years, and then 4 of those years on a very high level, I worked as a strength and conditioning coach. And one of the athletes I trained was a freestyle snowmobile rider for Winter X Games. And so yeah, you think about doing that on a motorcycle. Think about a 400-pound snowmobile and backflipping it and doing tricks off of it while you're backflipping and whatnot. And you think these guys are just like nailing the throttle and ripping it and hoping for the best, but they're not. Like, it's all a timing. Like, we would do stuff, and I was like, and it was breaking it down. It's like, okay, that flip was too slow. Your timing was off. You need to speed it up a little bit so that you can pull this other trick with it. And it's very gymnastics and head position and body position and everything. It's no different than your elite gymnast.
It's interesting you say that because my nephews are great at gymnastics. Great.
Yeah.
Just physical, just young men who are just physical specimens. They can do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts. And they have really shared with me the importance of endurance in motocross too. That it's just crazy intense. Like their non-motorcycle training is pretty intense also.
I think it was 2005. Pittsburgh Medical Center, University of Pittsburgh Medical Center did a study, and they pulled all these different athletes from different professional sports and put them through this conditioning test. And motocross at that time was deemed the most physically demanding sport. It was deemed the second most cardiovascular demanding sport, second to soccer. But it's, people don't realize a lot. We hear the comments all the time, like, well, you're just sitting on a dirt bike. You're not really doing anything. The bike's doing the work. That could be farther from the truth. Like, the G, you're pulling G's with inertia and force, and and then the high impact of all these bumps and on your joints and everything, and then controlling the 210-pound bike or whatever. There's a lot to it. Yeah, a lot of very high demanding core.
Yeah, it's super physical. I've ridden dirt bike in very short amounts and stuff, and I find myself just being super tense on it the whole time too. It's probably just because I'm terrified,
Yeah.
but it's like you're trying to like hold on to it and maneuver it, and everything is just tight, and then you get off and you're trying to open up your hands afterwards because
Yeah.
they're so suck. Yeah, so anybody who says that it's the bike doing the work clearly has
It's
no experience.
It's really interesting since I've gotten into CrossFit now that the correlation and my past in motocross has helped me so much in CrossFit because, like I told you, motocross and dirt bike kids are built so differently. And one of the things and where our perception is different is the amount of suffering that we can endure. And so you talk about like holding on to a barbell and going through anything. Like one of our in the Wheel Wad games, one of the workouts we did was 7 minutes of just clean and press. And our bar weight was 75 pounds. And so, I mean, you think about that, just clean and press for 7 minutes and the amount of suffering that you endure during a workout like that. And where a lot of guys are like, my forearms are blown up, I have got to let go of the bar. You correlate that to what I used to do in motocross. I used to race 2 35-minute motos outdoor in 100+ degree weather with an hour break in between. And you get 15 minutes into a moto, and if you have an incident or whatever where your forearms lock up and they're pumped up and you can't hardly hang on, the initial reaction is not, oh, I need to stop. I need to take a break. Like you just go, well, this freaking sucks, but I'm just going to it's just going to be 20 minutes of hell that I'm just going to have to endure and do the best I can do. Like stopping is not a thought or a perception in any way. And so you just suffer through it. And so when I got to CrossFit, I found like the amount of suffering that I can endure versus others that don't have that background is mentally it's unique.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I rode a snowmobile once with a bunch of these guys who are trackers and hunters. They must think I'm the biggest pussy. They had we went out like on 10 snowmobiles, and I kept having to stop because it wasn't a throttle like this. It was a thumb throttle.
Yeah.
And my thumb would just get exhausted. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, my thumb's done.
Yeah.
They're like,
it's okay. I hate snowmobiles, so I hated them.
Your first Instagram post, you don't have use of your legs in your very first Instagram post. Did you erase everything before then, or did you not start Instagram until then?
No, Instagram, I didn't have it till then. I was,
And what year was your accident?
2014.
Okay. And you were why were you strength and conditioning coach? How did you went to school for that? Why did you do that? No.
Experience. I had just built myself as an athlete, and even as a racer, like I was not a natural ability fast guy. Like I said, I was a minor league athlete, and I only got to the level that I did because of my strength and conditioning that I had built for myself. I was the guy that I wasn't going to have the super fast lap times. I wasn't going to be fast out of the gate. But what people saw is I never fell off. Like my lap time never changed. And so often towards the end of the race, I would just start picking guys off. And so I was known for that. I had a couple friends that were at a high level. One of those friends that I used to race with and train with all the time that was quite a bit younger than myself got a ride with one of the factories, and they required him to bring a trainer with him. And so he hit me up and said, hey, will you come be my trainer? And so that's how I got into that. And I had actually trained some guys on the side, just helping them out before that. So that got me onto into the major leagues or the factory level. And so I started, and then from there I built a reputation working with him and started training other guys. And so it was really experience. It was funny. Sometimes I would have these interviews with new riders, and on this side they're talking to this guy, and he's like, well, I have this kinesiology degree and a major in sports science and all this. And they're like, okay. And they're like, what's your background? I'm like, well, I raced for 17 years, 5 professionally. I did this. I worked with this rider, and this is the results they got. I was like, okay, so you get it. I want you.
Yeah.
There's the resume.
Right. So.
I worked at a home for disabled adults for 5 years, where they lived at the home, adults with like Down syndrome, autism, and it was like the same. In the 5 years I worked there were 8 adults there who lived there, and I would maybe 2 or 3 change. So it was the same adults. But when I started there, I was the lowest guy on the totem pole, making $7 an hour. And when I finished, I was running the house. I had 20 people working for me.
Yeah.
And not a single professional, meaning someone with a psychology degree, whether it was a bachelor's, master's, or a PhD, would ever last more than a couple weeks.
Yeah.
Because the working with that population, as opposed to just being book smart on it, not even in the same world. It required such a serious level of discipline of acknowledging people and not their behaviors, that if you didn't have that discipline or that level of awareness of yourself, then you're screwed. They would eat you alive.
Yeah,
And,
it's more about reading the
practical training.
individual. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's so interesting like that. I was just listening to a doctor speak the other day. I was so happy to hear them say this. Doctors are not there. They are horrible at giving people risk assessment or risk management. That is not their fucking job. Their job is to say, hey, you have the flu, and these are the possible cures for it. Vitamin C seems to work the best. This seems to work the worst. You choose. Like
I have individuals that, that reach out to me on Instagram or whatever, and they'll have questions, and they're like, well, I see you doing this or that, and I asked my doctor about it, and they said, no, you can't do that. And I'm like, yeah, my doctor said the same thing. Everything that we do in CrossFit, we're not supposed to do.
Right.
So it's just, it's crazy.
I appreciate their insight. I appreciate Sevon. So I could give you a story. So I was in India, and I was in a slum that had 2 million people, and people can't even imagine that, a slum with 2 million people. Anyway, and their slums there are clean, but basically everything's made out of cardboard and mud, but everything's organized and clean. And I'm there and I'm filming, and I take a step backwards and I step on a dog, and it bites me. And I'm there with some people, and the doctor in the slum, the head doctor of the slum says, hey, we have a massive rabies problem in India. You need to start the rabies protocol right away. And the guy who I'm there for, working with, Vitamin Angels, Howard Schiffer, we were there taking vitamin A to malnourished children. And I was making a documentary on it, and he says to me, yeah, we got to start the protocol. And I'm like, whoa, hold on a second. I go, you're saying rabies is a major problem in India? He goes, yeah. I go, how long have you been a doctor in this area, in this slum? And he goes, 13 years. I go, okay. And how many rabies cases have you seen in 13 years? He goes, 0.
Right.
Don't make sense.
Yeah. Okay. So.
But I went to Harvard, and they told me that my slum has a rabies problem.
Right. Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
Come on, man. You just give me the fucking numbers and let me do the math for myself. I'm like,
right.
give me the numbers. And of course 100%. I was fine. Totally my fault too. I stepped on the dog. I saw the dog was sleeping, and then I was filming. I was like, whatever you do, don't step on that dog. When you were, how many laps into your race were you when you had your accident?
It was the second lap.
And was anything weird about that day? Anything that made you have a premonition, possibly, that something might go wrong?
No, not to that effect. I mean, it was.
Any fight with your mom, your dad, your girlfriend?
No, we shouldn't have been racing. No, my wife had more of a premonition than I did. She had the wedding the night before, and she was supposed to help clean up all the next day. And she got up in the morning and just had this uneasy feeling. She was up in McCall, Idaho, which is about 2.5 hours away. And she just looked at the gals she was helping, and she said, I don't know why, but I got to get out of here. She said, I'm sorry to leave you high and dry, but I just had this feeling I need to go home. She thought it was our daughter. She was worried that something had happened to our daughter, and that's why she had these feelings.
Something did happen to your daughter.
She took off. And then, as soon as she got, and you have to drive through the mountains, so she didn't have cell phone service for a couple hours. And as soon as she got into cell phone service, one of our friends had left her a message. Yeah, you need to come to the hospital. Something's happened to Jed. Yeah. So.
Your wife goes in there, and it's obviously you're hurt, and it's about you. But how does she deal with that? Like, her fucking dude is broken. Like, how? She was
awesome.
She was awesome.
Yes, My parents obviously grew up with me in the way I was, so they were very experienced. But she took control of the situation, and the way she had the right people around me that I needed. Even the fact that she kicked out my mom because she knew she would be emotional and it would affect me. So she's like, you need to not be here right now. She brought in the right people. There was one situation where at first for my hip, they were gonna take me to Salt Lake. Kind of a funny story. And my dad is very much of the mindset of you, like doctors have an education, but they don't know everything, and so you don't take everything they say to heart. Like you kind of take it with a grain of salt. And so he was worried that that the doctors were just gonna push my wife around and what needed to be done with me. But I was supposed to have this hip surgery, and they were gonna take me to Salt Lake because they said nobody in Boise could do it. And then all of a sudden, they started prepping me for this surgery, and they said, okay, we're going to go ahead and do the surgery on this hip. And my wife was like, whoa, you said that you couldn't do this before. She said, I don't want a half-assed procedure done here. And the doctor said, well, no, we thought it was his pelvis at first, but it turns out it's just his hip socket, so we can fix it. And she was like, okay, but just the fact that she took charge and didn't just be like, oh, okay, I guess you're going to do it. Yeah. So yeah, she was awesome.
My dad had this E. coli infection. This is 15 years ago, and he was in the hospital. And basically they couldn't. It started getting really bad. His fever was crazy. They took him into the hospital. He started having to spend the night there. They couldn't grow it in a culture. They couldn't figure out what the fuck it was. They couldn't give him an antibiotic to fix it, and it started getting really, really scary. And then finally, after being there, I don't know, he was there for a lot of days, 7 or 13 days. They figured out what it was. And there was someone else on the East Coast. They had found a doctor on the East Coast who had the same situation there with the client, and they whatever protocol they followed, they figured it out, and they did it to my dad, and he was better. That was also, on a side note, one of the things where I asked the doctor, hey, should my dad change his diet? Is there anything he should be eating while he has this infection that would help mitigate the infection? The doctor's like, no, absolutely not. It's not food related at all. Fucking idiot. Anyway, so
drink your apple juice.
What? Yeah, here's your apple juice. Shut up. We'll put a teaspoon of sugar in it. Enjoy. And so so about a year later, my dad got the same infection again, and I took him to the hospital, and they start this process of trying to figure out what it is. And I stopped the doctor. I'm like, have you checked his record? And he goes, no. I'm like, well, will you go check his record and see what this has happened before? And they went and checked his medical record and oh shit, it's this again. But they were going to just take us down the fucking whole path again. And I'm not blaming them, but you have to be proactive and conscious at the hospital.
Mm-hmm. Yep. 100%.
It's the prison system. You'll just get in the revolving door and they'll never let you go.
Yeah.
So you got to be, you got to be proactive. So where does CrossFit and Jedidiah's life intersect?
Fairly quickly. So I actually started doing CrossFit in October of that same year that I got hurt in January. So about 10 months later. But I had started doing physical training in July of that year, and putting my own workouts together. You showed some clips of those very early workouts where I was doing the presses on the irrigation boxes and stuff like that. Fortunately, I had that fitness background where I was trying to figure stuff out from a wheelchair, and so I started looking for videos and whatnot, and I found YouTube videos of Kevin and then Stouty with Wheel Wad. And when I found those, because my initial reaction was I was self-aware enough that when I got injured, I knew that to keep a positive mental health, I had to find something else to channel my competitiveness into. And so I was going to get into downhill mountain bike racing. But I knew I had to rebuild myself in order to do that. So that was
wait. So, sorry, how would you do that without legs?
So there's two different styles of bikes. It's either a tricycle low to the ground or a quad bike. And full suspension, and they do. My wife has always told me you broke your back, and I understand, and we move on with life. However, you go and you break your neck, I'm putting you in a home.
Yeah.
So,
she dissuaded you from the downhill biking racing.
Well, I fell in love with CrossFit. So I started using CrossFit, and then that was in the end of 14, and then 15, Wheel Wad decided to adapt the open, and it was very rudimentary. We were doing it on a spreadsheet, but Stouty was running it, and so I got involved in that, and I did that. But as soon as I did that first open, it was oh yeah, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is my sport.
Does Wheel Wad have a website?
Yeah. Just wheelwad.com.
And what? Tell me, what is Wheel Wad?
So Wheel Wad is basically CrossFit for the adaptive world. They were the ones that initially started a formal platform. There were others that were adaptive that were doing CrossFit before that, including Stouty, but then he created Wheel Wad to get others involved and really launch a platform where we could promote this and get more adaptives involved and really grow this side of the sport and these divisions.
And it's not just for sitters. I saw like someone was jumping rope with one arm.
Yeah, essentially at this point there's 11 divisions, but eight main divisions, and then 11 with the, so the 8 main would be like seated, upper, but then if you wanted, then there's subcategories of like seated with hip, seated without hip, upper with 2 points of contact, upper with 1 point of contact, where it breaks down that way.
When do you become like, so you're a competitor.
Mm-hmm.
So it's pretty fucking obvious. When do you become annoyed with the fact that it's supposed to be this, I don't know what the word is. Like you're a competitor and you want this to be a serious competition. And there's some people who might see it as like, hey, this is like some sort of like just like things for people to go who don't look like who don't move like other people. Is there any point where you're like, hey, there's too many fucking divisions? Like, no, sorry, we're not doing that one. There's only one of you. We're not doing the 3 toes missing division and one eye and one eye. Like, no.
So yeah, that's some of it.
And are people cool? Like, do they get that? Like, I'm thinking to and I think about the transgender community all the time for that. I'm thinking to myself, like, if I'm let's say I wanted to transition to a woman, I would then fucking like be like, okay, I'm in a really small percentage and I'm going to stay away from sports. I mean, easy for me to say, my life's fucking easy. I don't have that. I'm just a fucking knucklehead with a dick. But I wouldn't want to like when are you like, okay, there can't be the no arm blind division?
Yeah, it's so you either pick one, right? So are you going to be in the vision division or are you going to be in the amputee division? Like there is some of that where there's multiple and they're like, okay, well you just need to fit the one that, or is it neurological and that's why you only really have use of one arm? So are you in the neuromuscular division or are you in the amputee? And it comes down to your ability, right? And what's your true ability and how do you define what your ability is? Because that's the one thing that we try to, and the sport it's still extremely small, right? I mean, extremely small, but it's gotten big enough that in 2020 is when they started separating these divisions where now there's 2 seated divisions because there was enough seated athletes that it got to be where, I'm constantly getting beat, but it's by guys with use of their hips. So it's like, are we truly measuring fitness or are we measuring ability? And so that's where that started to kind of, if there was enough numbers in certain situations, they started to divide because we really want to test fitness here. We don't want to test ability. And then some of the competition.
Say that last sentence again, Jedidiah. We want to test, say that last
we
sentence.
We want to test fitness. We don't want to test ability.
Yes. Okay. And it's not a, correct me if I'm wrong, and it's not a fucking charity.
No, and that's one of the things that I really try and push. And that's why I don't know if you've noticed, so I've had some interaction with some games athletes in trying to educate the public, and to be honest, I'm trying to educate CrossFit because I think there's several at CrossFit HQ that don't have a clue what we're doing, and they think we're a charity or they think that we're scaled athletes that are just trying to do our best. And it's hard because our sport is still very small, right?
Very
it's like
small.
The numbers are very small.
Very, very small. Not just your division, but the whole entire thing is small.
Yeah,
it's just spread out really wide, but it's tiny. It's a shallow pool.
Exactly. And so while the numbers are small, the percentages are the same.
What do you mean by that?
The top 1%. We are elite athletes. The way we train and the work we put in is no different. I'm no different ability-wise as far as measuring fitness than Justin or Noah or Bethany. These other games athletes that I've worked with. Like the work I put in and what I can do physically, fitness-wise, I'm no different than they are. And that's not to take anything away from them and their capabilities or mine. It's just different. I've had interaction with Noah where I've had him do seated workouts. I had Justin come over to my garage because we live in the same city, and he went through a full seated session. And afterwards, he was like, he couldn't touch my time for the workout, and he was like, that was brutal. He was like, I thought it had a 150 meter ski erg, and that's where he really was like blown away. See, like 150 meters is nothing, right? But his pace fell off 10 seconds in doing 150 meters, and he was like, holy crap.
Because
the amount of delts I had to activate.
He can't use his legs, right?
Right, and even just the range of motion was different because he has to go out around the chair with the ski, right? And so he's activating his delts more than he would if he was standing, and he's like, they blew up. And so it's the same, right? Like if I started walking tomorrow, I'm not all of a sudden going to be a games athlete because now I have to train in a completely different way. It's just different. And that's really the message that I'm trying to say. Like, yes, we may be small, but what we do at the top is the same. Like, there's this phrase, adaptive is not equal to scaling. And it's trying to really send that home, that there may only be a few of us in each division that are capable of that, but what we do is gnarly for who we are.
I watched Justin say that afterwards too. He was talking about it on an interview with the people at Wadapalooza, and you could genuinely tell, like, his whole perspective of everything was completely changed after doing that stuff with you.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to get him involved at Wadapalooza, because I'd already put him through a full workout session at home, so I knew he got it. It wasn't like this, oh hey, good for you. It was like, no, these guys are legit, and you're gonna want to watch this and be a part of it.
and what's interesting too is after he did your workout, he's fitter. Meaning, it's the same. The example would be jumping pull-ups. Just because you can do 60 unbroken pull-ups doesn't mean that if you did a really hard jumping pull-up workout, you wouldn't be fitter. Jumping pull-ups are fucking a beast of their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, 100%. Well, it's just like people underestimated the wall walk when it came out last year, right? Like, oh, wall walk, that's lame. It's like, yeah, I knew it from the minute I heard it. Like, yeah, you do those in this type of workout, that's gonna blow you up. And people were humbled. Like,
have you seen? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, just because it's a simple movement doesn't mean it's not tough in the right context.
Right. Have you seen wheelchair tennis at the highest level? It's fucking nuts.
Yeah. Yeah, the chair skills involved in that, both them and basketball players, like the ability to maneuver in their chairs and manipulate a chair the way they can is, my hat's off to those guys, because I would get owned.
Yeah, I watched wheelchair tennis for the first time. I can't remember. It was wherever Jovic played last, and it was on before he came out. And they get 2 bounces, and it is absolutely nuts. I want to get one of those dudes on the podcast. It is some crazy. I honestly I've really no interest in sports without able-bodied people until I saw that. But I would have never watched that if I wasn't waiting for the main guys to come on. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And to give Wadapalooza, like, I have no interest in watching the old people work out or the non-able-bodied people work out. But then, like, I watched someone like Logan Aldridge a couple of years ago. I just happened to catch him at watching some footage of Wadapalooza, and I watched him work out, and I'm like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Like, this is worth watching. This is nuts.
Yeah.
And there are those 2 sides to the sport, right? There's someone like Justin who everyone wants to watch. But then there's people who would be in chairs who are doing, I'm trying to think of the exact way you worded it, but basically you're at the top of your game of anyone in a chair, whether they're able-bodied or not. They can't do what you can do unless they get to the top of that sport. I wonder, is it important that people respect it? Is it important that people like?
It's not so much. It's important they respect it. It's important that they understand it. So they important what we're trying to build. It's the thing is how did CrossFit grow, right? Like, people have different opinions, and mine might be skewed because I have a sports background, but sports is what drives attraction to certain methodologies or certain things, right? Like the NFL, football didn't grow to what it was without the NFL. And people watching it and wanting to emulate it. Whether they ever get to that level or not, that's essentially what drives them, is wanting to be like those guys that are the elite of that sport. CrossFit was no different. When the games really started to get attention, that's what grew CrossFit, because people wanted to emulate what those top high-level individuals were doing. And so my main thing is, if people understand it and understand what we're doing, and we can get more on those stages and have that kind of appearance, then it will grow the sport, and it will grow the health benefits and the health factor of just getting more people in the gym, because maybe they don't ever get to that competition level, but they want to emulate it. And so it's what drives them to want to get in the gym.
Hey, are there any able-bodied people who compete in like the wheel, like in the wheel division?
No.
Could you?
No.
You're not allowed to.
That was
Like if they found out your legs work, they'd be like,
Yeah, that was some of the misunderstanding with the Open last year. They had people that had like knee surgeries or whatnot, and so they couldn't do it normal. So they joined our divisions and trying to compete. Like there was one time that was insane on the first workout, and I started looking, and it was a gentleman that had knee surgery, and he thought, well, I'll just do the seated division this year, and it was like. But they sifted through it, and they weeded them out. It was just a misunderstanding, miseducation.
Yeah, I'm not hating on it. I'm not hating on it. I think I'm not hating on it. I think it's cool. Hey, God, as weird as it sounds, I wonder if that's what it takes to push that, to make that. If you wanted to make that mainstream, you'd have to make that concession. It's weird. Certain sports, like for me, some years I enjoy the women's competition more in CrossFit, and some years I enjoy the men's competition more. And the last couple of years I've enjoyed the women's competition more. Track and field, like when I see it in the Olympics, I like watching the women a little bit more than the men. I don't know why. Basketball, I enjoy the men more. If I watch basketball, I enjoy men's basketball more than women. It's interesting. I use that as the example. So it's interesting what you would need to do. I hear what you're saying about it being respected, or at least understood, or not respected but understood. But it would be interesting to see. I would be curious what it would take to draw more eyeballs to it. Are there any? What's the biggest? What do you call it? Non-abled sport in the world, like sport with non-abled bodies. Is that what you call it? I'm trying to use your
adaptive or whatever.
Adaptive.
Yeah.
Okay. Adaptive athletes.
That's a good question. I don't know. I would guess basketball or wheelchair rugby.
Oh shit.
Would be my guess, but I honestly don't know. I mean, there's a high level of Paralympians and multiple different Paralympic sports, and so, but basketball is one of those. So yeah, I would guess basketball or wheelchair rugby is probably the biggest. One of those two.
Could you ever have prosthetics, or you can't because you're hip?
No, I wouldn't need them. I couldn't functionally make them work. Exactly.
Okay. And why keep the legs then?
Blood flow. Yeah.
No reason to fuck with the like because it's still, you want to keep the piping all consistent with just the way the regular human body would work.
Yep.
I thought you were gonna say something else, like fuck that. Would you get rid of your legs? And I would be like, no, I hear you.
Well, yeah, you never know what's gonna happen down the road, right? There are guys that randomly, you never know what God has in store. So.
That's right.
What is your do they drug test you guys?
CrossFit did at the games last year with the 3 divisions that competed there. I know
they did.
Yeah.
Has anyone popped yet in the adaptive class?
That's
when you guys will know you've made it.
So there was one, but the guy had a TUE, or T. However, he had an agreement because it was a prescribed thing because of his disability that he had to. And I don't know what it was, or I know any of the details. That's basically as much as I've heard and know. So it is a little bit more of a unique, touchy thing because of disabilities. People have required medications or whatnot that they have to take for their condition. But because of their disability, it doesn't give them any advantage. It's literally trying to maintain, a sustainable homeostasis for them. So,
yeah. Do you do outreach to people who are now going through, like a guy who got hit? Let's say he was in a car accident yesterday. And then they'll be like, hey, Jedidiah, will you talk to this guy, or will you visit this guy in the hospital? And do you do that?
Yep, 100%.
And is there a protocol you use, or you just wing it based on?
It's usually a DM through Instagram, and somebody tells me their story and I can relate to them. And sometimes I reach out and it's just a, hey, I'm here for you if you need anybody or have any questions. And sometimes it's more relatable. And so it's like, hey, you know, I understand what you're going through. Here's some things that, you know, it just depends on the individual and the situation.
And what's the lowest you've been? Have you ever thought about ending your life?
No. I've honestly been very accepting of this just because it's a long story, but you talk about, you know, Zach and what he said is like, well, be careful what you pray for. Well, I had this situation that I have a deep faith, and I had been going through this situation where I was struggling with my faith, and I was asking for opportunity to show audacious faith. It had to do with the whole study I was going through, and so I started praying for these opportunities to have audacious faith, which is basically to say that I wanted to show a faith of something that would blow people's minds, that they were like, that's not physically capable, or that's not, you know, if you think of things on an earthly presence, you just don't think that's possible, but God has more power than we have. So I started praying for that opportunity. And so when I got paralyzed, I instantly knew that I don't think God caused my accident, but he gave me the opportunity to use it to show audacious faith. So honestly, I was accepting and okay with my accident right away, where I was like, okay, this is my opportunity. This is where God wants me, and that's what I'm going to do. In fact, it got to the point to where at times it frustrated me, where people were like, you know, you just need to stay positive. You need to believe that you can walk again. If you keep working at this, you're going to be okay. You know, that there was this idea that success was going to be like, if I could keep this mentality of I will walk again one day. And to be honest, that freaking pissed me off, because I was like, God put me in a wheelchair for a reason. I know I'm going to do great things and show that whether I can walk in again or not, that's not the end all of end all. It's what I do with my life, with whatever happens to me. That's the end all of end all. And so that's kind of been my mission.
Hey, that's some fucking asshole shit to say to someone. Were those people in a wheelchair who told you that? They better.
No, it was people that had
to tell someone like, fuck you, fuck you.
But their intentions were right? They were trying to keep me motivated and a positive attitude, but
it's like, hey, just because you feel uncomfortable, don't project that shit onto me. How about you just get a big old dose of shut the fuck up and let me just deal with this? I mean, if you had that attitude, you're like, dude, I'm gonna walk no matter what again, I would get behind it. But I wouldn't present that to you and project that onto you. It's your trip. It's your fucking trip.
Yep.
It's crazy.
100%.
They're almost like setting up for success. Tell me, so faith is a really interesting word.
Yeah.
You, my words, not yours, but you're saying at some point in your life, your faith was waning. When I think of my faith, it's weird. It doesn't work like that. It's not even built on anything. It just is. I can't see it waning or growing. I mean, sometimes I become aware of it, like hyper aware of it. What do you mean that like you felt like you needed it to be tested? Is that what happened to Job? He had his faith tested. That's what that whole story is?
100%.
Okay.
I think it was. It was.
God, I just want to say right now, God, please do not test mine. I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good.
It was more like, what's my role? Like, what am I doing with this, and what purpose am I serving? Type situation, right?
Right.
And I wanted to be more than I thought I could be.
Right.
Yeah. Since your accident, do you feel more fulfilled in that duty now than you ever did before?
100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's awesome. God,
yeah, because that was the question I was going to have about the mental side of it and acceptance, and then obviously we landed on that without asking the question, but the answer you gave was anything way better than I could imagine you would have said. So that's really cool.
Drew, please do not interrupt our conversation when it's something so beautiful and deep. Oh, you want to buy a shirt? Never mind. Feel free to interrupt all you want. This is a large. I always wear a large. I cannot. I got big old titties, and I got broad shoulders, and I can't. And I'm kind of chubby, and I can't have this shit like making me look like I'm a C cup. My boys are always goes, God, why do you have such big boobs? And I just can't. I just.
You don't want the schmedium?
No. I mean, if I'm like really sucked down, if I can get down to like 150, which is like, I don't know if I'll ever do that again. Yes, I would do it because it would make my arms look bigger. But if you're 5'8", 185, I think you're a large.
Yeah, that'd probably work. Large,
Yeah,
you.
right now I'm 5'5" and about 170. Yes, barbelljobs.com. Get a job. Is your wife when you married your wife was or when you met your wife, did you guys have the same faith, the same belief, were you on the same page with your God?
Yes.
Was that a prerequisite?
I don't know that it was a prerequisite, but it definitely makes life easier if we have the same mindset.
Yeah. And
we wouldn't have made it through this with two different mindsets,
Oh.
Yep.
And because it's a test of her faith too. It's a test. She's being
Correct.
tested also.
Just as much as I am, and that's another thing people don't see or realize, that it impacted her and has affected her life just as much as it has mine, if not more.
I just keep thinking about your daughter. Just like it. I mean, in the end, obviously, of course, it'll make her a stronger person. And 5's not a bad age for that to happen. 6, 7, 8, 9, every year you went up further, I think it would have been more traumatic.
Sure.
And your mom, how did your mom handle it? And your dad?
They were pretty good, because I have a history, right? Like, so I made my first trip. I was a crazy, reckless kid. And so the amount of trips I made to the emergency room, I mean, outside of even motocross racing, like, there was a time where my mom was taking me to the emergency room. I don't even remember for what. It's probably a concussion or something, where the nurse looked at her and said, "You realize you had him here exactly 1 year ago to date." And my mom was like, "Okay, makes sense. Sounds about right." Like,
you got a punch card for your visits. They're like, "Oh, one more, and this next visit's free."
Exactly. So it was not a shock that this type of thing happened to me in my life. My wife always jokes that I'm a cat, right? And that I can account for times I should have been dead already. And so yeah, I'm on life 8 or 9 right now.
And I'm sure you've thought before how you would feel if this happened to your daughter.
Yeah.
And how would you feel? It would be worse than if it happened to you, right? I mean, can you imagine what your parents went through?
Correct. I even think about the situation of my spouse, like, would I rather my wife be in this situation and I take care of her? Would I and knowing what I go through, I would just rather it be me.
Yeah. Isn't that fascinating?
It's not what you would think prior to the accident.
Right. Right. And wow. I don't think the world works like this, but think of it like, I mean, there could be, I don't know, now I'm getting weird, but an alternate reality where this happened to your daughter and you prayed to the heavens and said, "God, please reverse this and make it happen to me." He says, "Your wish is my command," and your daughter's to rewind the shit. And now it's you. I mean, if you think of it like that, like, yeah, no duh, this has to happen to me. This can't happen to my wife, my mom, my dad, or my daughter.
Yeah.
I cannot allow this.
Yeah.
And, as you get older, do you see how do you see this? Like, I see, how old are you? You're 42?
Yeah.
As you get older, how do you see yourself? Do you find it more important to take care of your body more than ever because you need these two more than ever?
Yeah, 100%. Well, and it's just, I mean, it's aside from being you think about it in terms of able-bodied and being a games athlete and the physical things that you can do compared to others, but that's going to go away someday, right? And you're going to live more of a normal life. And so, like, some of the things that I get away with and some of the things that I do from a wheelchair, situations like being here in Mexico, like, there is no such thing as an accessible room in Mexico. Like, I'm using a freaking patio chair for a shower chair. Right. And so the situations that I maneuver and can get away with because of my fitness, there's a realization that won't last forever, and that we
Right.
either have to like cater our travel and what we do more to accessible situations, or one of my favorite memories was the year after my accident, we took a cruise to Alaska, and you start looking at the excursions on the different things, and the accessible ones are extremely lame. It's a 3 hour train ride. It's like I just sat on a plane, or sat on a boat. Why do I want to sit on a train for 3 hours? Like stuff like that. And I was like, I don't want to do any of that. And then we went to we were in Ketchikan, and we went to a Discovery Center, and there was like a film on the bush pilots, like a 15-minute documentary, and I watched that. And I looked at my wife and I said, that's what I want to do.
Oh yeah, I saw you in the plane.
Yeah, and so we went down there, and it's not accessible, right? So we just started talking to pilots. Hey, would you take me up on a plane if I could get into it? Well, we were not really built. Finally I found this one plane that was just a couple. It's him and his wife, and he said, if you can get on the plane, I'll take you.
It was a water plane, right?
Yeah, yeah. And so we get on the dock, and it's 2-foot drop down to the platoon. It's 1.5 feet from there over to the ladder, and it's just this little metal ladder to get up into the thing. And we're like, okay, how are we going to do this? And I said, do you load cargo on the plane? And he said, yeah. And I said, what do you use to load cargo? And he says, well, I have this ramp. I said, get the ramp. And so I lowered myself onto the dock, and I just literally scooted up this ramp into the plane. And and that was one of the best things ever. And that was not accessible, but because of what I do fitness wise and my abilities, like I made it work. And so things like that.
I haven't been to Disneyland, but for the last like 10 years, people who go there tell me, Sevon, you better not go there. Your head's going to explode. And the reason why they say that is because there's just people in fucking wheelchairs everywhere who are not. Yeah, and scooters, not because they've had a motorcycle accident, but because they've spent too much time in the buffet line, which is just insane to me. And I wonder if in the aggregate and the big picture, if those people are making your plight more difficult or easier. Because on one hand, it makes the world a little more wheelchair accessible, but on the other hand, it makes people like think that if you're in a wheelchair, like the vast majority of people I see in handicap spots are obese.
Yeah,
and I don't accept that. I don't accept that at all. I don't think make things easier for people because it makes the world codependent.
My biggest thing perception wise is it bothers me to be lumped with those people.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I use the handicap spot because I need the extra space to get my wheelchair out. Yeah. I don't mind pushing my ass across the parking lot from the back.
You need to be able to open your door.
But I can't open my door if I park back there. What's your excuse? Like you need to park in the back. And start walking.
What should be in the back, doesn't it?
Right.
Do you know? Are you familiar with Kyle Maynard? You know who that is? He used to own a CrossFit gym. He has no arms and no legs. Extremely fit. He was a wrestler. He even had an MMA fight. But one of the things he said, which I thought was fascinating, I've told the story a bunch of times, but I just love it so much. He went to he spoke at Wounded Warriors, and he gets up in front of them, and it's a room full of dudes with missing body parts, right? Legs and eyes and hands and feet and just everything missing, right? And it looks like a bunch of Mr. Potato Heads, and that the cat got. And he says, I feel sorry for you guys. And the room gets quiet. And he goes, because I was born like this. I don't know any better. But to have that shit taken away from you, man, that must suck. And it's such a, no one else could ever say that to them, right?
Sure.
No one, it's a dude with no arms and no legs saying he feels sorry for you. And I'm like, wow, holy shit. What like a powerful moment. Like, you should look the dude up. He's a great guy. He's so awesome. Yeah. Yeah, he's a great guy. So as you get old, so we all head to decrepitude, right? Whether you're, no matter what, we all head to decrepitude. But yours at 70, because you don't have legs, like you were saying, your shit might get a little more difficult than mine, right? So do you have an exit strategy for how hard you're pushing your body now at all? Like, I say that because I have kids, and I'm like, hey, like I can't be like throwing my back out doing heavy deadlifts ever again the rest of my life.
It's definitely my training has tailored because of my age, and because of my prior abuse of my body with motocross and what my shoulders have already been through and whatnot. CrossFit definitely helps me maintain health. There's this idea of others that are ignorant to the sport, but have that have been in wheelchairs and they've abused their shoulders over life, because there's this idea that a lot of the stuff they do unconditioned and they do cold, and so they put this extreme wear and tear, pulling themselves up into big pickups or different stuff like that on their body, and so they pay for it later. But the difference is with CrossFit, there's a whole system to it, right? Like proper warming up, proper proper maintenance, to where you're taking the right steps along with that load to condition your body to handle it. But you get to a certain point where volume wise and from prior scar tissue injuries and tendonitis, where I've had to and just recovery abilities, it's my program looks more like Samantha Briggs now, where I do only so much, and then I have to take more breaks within my training cycle and whatnot to be able to maintain the load without just flaring up tendonitis or other things that way.
Can you did I send you the email, Souza, with the videos from his Instagram? Do you see the one with there's one that says the 100-pound D ball? Do you still mess around with muscle ups, Jedidiah?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You do, man. That's nuts. You do those on your shoulders. And do you see the 100-pound D ball? I can pull it up if you can't, Souza.
I got it. Yeah, just taking a
Okay.
second to load here.
This is. I mean, you do this so easy. I don't even know how you're doing this. I mess around with D balls a lot, and this is nuts. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where you're rolling
Yeah.
a 100-pound D ball. You're like, is that really hard? You make that look so easy.
It's just like anything else. It's just practice and learning. A lot of it is core. I've really focused on building my core, especially a lot of wheel athletes, they do it. They rely on their arms too much, even with their lifts and stuff. And I really okay, how many muscle groups do I have, and how many muscle groups can I incorporate in one movement? And just taking the time to, as much as I can, build all those, really build my core. And I think motocross again helped me with that, because motocross was so core dependent, that I understood the strength. The more I can strengthen my core, both front and back, the better I can be at a lot of different things.
So you're contracting your stomach there. You're consciously contracting your
Yeah.
stomach muscles in your core.
The biggest thing I'm struggling with is you can't really tell, but that's a tapered driveway.
Yes.
So you notice I keep rolling every time I try and pick it up, and I lose my balance.
Another fascinating move that I liked were these this, I think it's the Florida chair with the vest. Do you see that one, Sue? Oh yeah, this is nuts. Do you see that Florida chair with the vest on?
Yes, hold on.
I love your expression on your face in this one, like, oh shit, that was hard. Is that
it's a very gymnastics. It's like doing muscle ups with a vest or heavy weight.
How often do you practice this right here? Or do you not even have to practice this? Is this just your everyday life? Is this happen at least once? No,
because that's a high transfer, and especially for me, because of my fused hip, I normally transition into my chair differently, more from a front point where I get over the chair and then swing my hips. I push up and swing my hips into it. So doing it from this type of position is extremely hard for me, because my hip fights me.
Mm.
It's all you. It's kind of like using your arm to jump up and then your other arm to pull at the same time.
Yeah, and trying to swing your hips.
Yeah, and what's to stop that chair from coming back over on you? What's keeping that chair down?
It's
like that wheelie bar in the front.
Yeah, it's proportions where the weight it's stable because of how the wheels are dispersed.
Yeah, it's nuts. Is that so? When you wake up in the morning, you roll out of bed and do you go to the floor, or do you go to straight into a chair?
So I transition into. I had a therapy table built,
Uh-huh.
So it's a table with a memory foam top that has vinyl stretched over it, and it's like a 3x6. And I do like all my stretching and everything from that.
No, but I mean, I'm just trying to figure out your routine in the morning. Like you wake up, you're in bed. Like
Yeah.
I get up and I just run over to the bathroom or I turn on the coffee machine.
Yeah.
Like you get out and you
I-
just and you get into a chair or you go onto the floor.
I get into my chair, but from there, my first stop is my therapy table to stretch out because I got extremely tight laying in bed all night.
Just right away.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder, I bet you most people don't do that who are in your situation.
I don't know.
They probably just deal with fucking the tightness and just slowly their life becomes more and more fucked up.
Yeah.
I mean, whether you're able-bodied or not. I mean, you know what I mean? Like just people just not taking care of their body. Well, thank you for coming on. It was great talking to you. Congratulations.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Who's the fittest seated guy in the world?
So in the without hip division, that would be me. In the with hip division, that would be Tommy Ozga, who is an incredible athlete.
Tommy Ozga. And did you get that title at the games?
Wheel Wad games.
Wheel Wad games.
They did not have any division for us other than the open. And so
does that piss you off, or are you cool with that?
There was some therapy to just accepting it and moving on. But Wheel Wad has done an incredible job of creating a true test of fitness for us. And so yeah,
that's awesome.
Do you see that changing? Does the game
not in the next few years, to be honest?
Yeah.
I don't think it's room. I think it's I think honestly it's a education thing. It's really understanding and being able to build a true test. I don't think they want to half-ass it, and so I think they're more reserved to really do it until they know they can do it right.
The games people, the CrossFit games. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. From the years I worked at CrossFit, when CrossFit doesn't do something, it's strictly a at least when I was there, it's very much they want to make everyone happy. It's just it's like what you said. They want to do everything right, and it's just resources.
Right.
And so it's so hard. It's so interesting too. You sound so sober, and it's good that and kind about it. Getting upset at those people, or like when I see people, like so many people, I hear this like protest, like the documentaries are making money, they should pay the athletes, or Noble should be giving the athletes money for t-shirts. And just the approach, it's like, dude, like it's not like that. This perception, it's all just people here. This perception that there's this corporate juggernaut that's like taking advantage of people or hurting people, or like, man, like if you saw how hard Heber and Marsden work on these documentaries, you would say you would say the athletes, it's just perspective. You would say the athletes should be giving them money.
Right.
Not fucking them sharing the money. Fucking Heber has to leave his fucking kids to fucking travel around the world to film your ass work out.
Well, what they've done to shine light and education on the sport overall is huge. It's just like when that documentary came out on Netflix for F1, you know, the Drive to Survive, and what it did for that sport.
Yeah.
The more people that understand it and are educated, like that's what they've done for CrossFit, is they've given that kind of behind the scenes light on it to where more people understand it and have a better education on it now, and so they're more into it.
Yeah, and speaking along those lines, real quick before we take off here, I own a CrossFit gym, and also for others as well. Is there anything that I should be thinking about to making the gym more open? Because it's already accessible. I have the ramps, I have all the protocol in the bathroom, I have the desk situated, the front desk situated, so it's accessible. But is there anything else that myself or other gyms should be thinking about to make sure that we're accessible for any seated athletes that want to come into the gym, or just anybody in general, adaptive?
I think outside of being accessible, I think it's just understanding the resources and just knowing, so when somebody comes in, you're not hesitant to be like, I hope I can help you. Like if there's not answers, if there's things that you don't know, like Wheel Wad, myself, like there's individuals that are great resources, and we want to see the sport grow. So we're more than happy to answer any questions or guide you, because every person is different, right? There's a T12. You can't just look at me and go, oh, well, this T12 does this. And it's like, well, yeah, but it took me 5 years to get there. And this is where I started. So you're not going to know that until you just start working with them. And then If you're not sure, you ask somebody, right? And so it's just really being open and understanding what the resources are to reach out to.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I'd say this too. Anyone who is like whatever, whether you're 200, thanks, Sam. That's fucking crazy. Thank you so much. I don't think you guys realize how much the money helps, by the way. I need to do a whole
Tremendous.
episode on that. It's very generous. If you're 100 pounds overweight, or you're in a wheelchair, or you're fucking blind, or you're old and you go to a gym and it doesn't feel like a right fit, or they're not, like, just call them out on it. Be like, hey, I don't feel comfortable here. And then see if they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. That's fucked up. Like, I was just tripping. People trip. People don't like, it's okay that someone trips on you if you're in a wheelchair, if you're fat or you're old. Give them a chance to unfuck themselves. Be like, hey, it's cool. Like, I know I have one leg and I'm 70, but like, work with me, make it work. I mean, you have to break the ice too. But if they still can't get their fucking head wrapped around you, switch gyms. It's okay. This community is
able-bodied individuals do that.
Say that again. Yes.
I said able-bodied individuals do that. You either fit in here or you don't, and then you find out where you do fit in.
Yes. So don't use that as an excuse to stop. The community, the people who do CrossFit, the vast majority of them are overachievers, perfectionists, people who take personal accountability and personal responsibility, and they will want to go out of their way to they'll be up for the challenge of working with you. If they're not, no big deal. Move on to the next one. No one gives a shit. That's the hardest thing you have to understand. I may be tripping when I walk in the gym and I'm like, whoa, who's this dude in the wheelchair next to me working out? The second it's 3, 2, 1, go, nobody's tripping.
No.
And when the workout's over, nobody's tripping. Everyone's like high-fiving, happy. The tripping is so short. No one cares after the go. And then you'll never have to do that again. You just have to get through it once. And the next time I see Jedidiah in my gym, I won't be tripping on who's this dude in the wheelchair. I'll just walk over to him and be like, what's up, dude? Let's get it today. And he'll do the same to me, and it's done.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that I think people in my situation underestimate is the not only the physical health benefits, but the mental health benefits of getting involved in CrossFit and the social aspect that a lot of these individuals, like in my situation, don't have in their life. They live very isolated and don't have that kind of supportive community. And when you get involved in CrossFit, that's huge for mental health, is to have that kind of community, to be able to, that outlet to socially rely on.
You know, that's interesting too. You're the guy who, if you're the guy who walks around in the wheelchair all day, you have to know that the whole fucking world is projecting onto you some sort of like fucking bullshit pity story. That poor guy, I wonder what happened. That's the guy in the wheelchair. And people avoid what they don't know. You go to a CrossFit gym and you're just normal.
Yep.
Maybe not the first day, maybe not the second day, but after, probably second day, as soon as people work out with you, you're normal. And that's got to be great for your mental health. Because you are normal, and it's just people are confused by your fucking chair or your prosthetic or whatever it is, and you need to be around people who like could give two shits. They just want to beat you in a workout.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, it's a huge. It's a non-seen the projection of other human beings. Yeah. You must always feel like you. Especially being kind of as gregarious as you are, you're probably like breaking through that wall with people just fucking by the dozens every day, huh? Like you have to be extra, break that ice and be like, hey, look, I'm just normal. Like you have to get them over their like, not discomfort, but it's the unknown of your wheelchair.
Correct. Yeah. Well, and there's been people that, and it's an education. One of my favorite stories was the original CrossFit box that I used to attend. The owner's son, who was like 8 or 9 at the time, Frank told me a story where they were in the grocery store with his son and his son's buddy. So his son's name is Charlie, and Charlie had a buddy there. And they're in the grocery store and they see a guy in this wheelchair. And Charlie's buddy goes, "Oh man, that's sad. I feel bad for that guy." And mind you, this is after like attending the CrossFit gym for a year where he's around me every day. And Charlie looks at his buddy and goes, "Why? He can do anything we can do."
Yeah.
And it was just and Frank thought that was the best, because it was just this whole different perception of what other people thought of people in a wheelchair because of what he experienced with me every day in the gym. It's like, I don't do anything different than anybody else. Like, just live life.
That kind of feigned kindness or caring is something in the last 5 or 6 years of my life that I've really, really transcended. I don't mean to be mean, but feeling sorry for someone is like one of the worst things you could do to another human being. It is extremely malicious.
Yeah.
It is extremely malicious. There was I have kids, and we were at the beach, I don't know, 6 months ago, and there was a guy sitting there, and he only had one leg, and he was like 30, and my kids were just staring at him. And finally I'm like, hey dude, you've crossed the mark of staring. Now you got to go over and talk to him. My older boy's like, what? I'm like, go. It's like, you're tripping on he's missing a leg, right? He's like, yeah. I'm like, go talk to him, ask him what happened.
That's awesome.
And my son went over there, and he's like, well, and it's the same with dogs. Like when they see a 3-legged dog, they're like, I'm like, dude, just go ask the owner what happened. Like no one's avoiding. No one thinks it's weird except everyone. The guy doesn't think it's weird. It's his life.
Right. Exactly.
And 100%. If you go over and ask him what happened, he tells you to fuck off. So what? Then you just fuck off. But he's not going to. He's going to be so happy that you said, hey, what happened? Where's your leg? I mean, you're a fucking kid. You've never seen no one without a leg.
Yeah.
100%.
All right. Thank you so much for talking, Jedidiah. You're always welcome.
Yeah.
If there's ever time you just want to like come on and shoot the shit, or if you got an event coming up you want to promote, I want to like start making this podcast so like people can come on like for 15. Like we have Nicky Rodriguez coming on. We've had him on like 3 or 4 times. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. We're having him coming on tomorrow just for like 30 minutes to talk about just where he's at. So if there's ever time you want to come on, just shoot me a text.
Yeah. One quick thing that I will plug is
Please.
We are in the process of, I'm going to be shooting a small docu-series through the CrossFit Open this year
Cool.
with some other individuals. I'm going to start with Justin. We're going to do and kind of what we were talking about the adaptive is not scaling and different perceptions, and trying to educate more about what we do as high-level elite adaptive athletes, and getting into some of the strategies of the workouts and how we break them, talking about the stimulus matching the able body and whatnot. And then I'm going to finalize it with the last week. I did it last year, but I'm going to head down to, I know you have them on tomorrow, to Justin Kotler and the Underdog Athletics crew. And we're going to complete the last week of the Open with them. And we're going to shoot it and put this docu-series on my YouTube channel. And I know Justin's going to have some on his YouTube channel as well. So I would just suggest that people keep an eye on my YouTube channel and my Instagram for that to come out, because I think it'll be interesting.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you're getting that kind of star power too. Hey, is DeLugos over there at Underdog? Do you know?
Yes, Matt.
Yep. DeLugos, yeah. Tell him I said hi. He doesn't know who I
will.
am. Tell him I said hi and tell him I want him on the show.
He's
I
an
saw him
awesome
compete
dude.
at Wadapalooza, and I was just fascinated with how big he is. He's a fucking child.
He's a good dude.
Yeah.
Yes, he is.
Yeah. All right, man.
100%. All right. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have fun in Mexico.
I will. Thank you.
It looks beautiful.
Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks, Jedidiah.
Bye.
Bye.